and all of that, and the slippery and the black eyes and whatever. So it was really, that's what I used to hear. And the Somalis continue to really gravitate toward Minnesota more than anywhere else in the United States. So in my book, again, when I was doing the interview, I asked so many people as to why Minnesota? And one of my interviewers said, being in Minnesota reminds me of living in Somalia. And I said, what? Then she added, except to the weather. So America really is referred to as a land of opportunity where refugees believe in liberty, equality, hard work, and prosperity. And many Somalis refugees in the refugee camps in Kenya or Ethiopia believed Minnesota is the land of opportunity. That's why they really gravitate toward Minnesota, and that's why they really came here. So, as I said earlier, the Somali Americans or the Somali refugees came to central Minnesota because of the jobs that most of the times did not require much English skills, especially in St. Cloud area, the ones who came in 1999 till now, I would say. They came here because of jobs. They were looking for opportunities, affordable housing, close-knit community, and also the services that were available to the community, whether it's transportation services or interpretation services, healthcare, etc. And also, they wanted to have to live in a safe environment where they can raise their kids. So refugee resettlement agencies here became exceptionally active. I briefly want to talk about the difference between the primary refugees, which of course you see the definition, the refugees who are directly brought here from Africa. So for instance, if someone comes from Africa and they stay maybe in Seattle, Washington, and so forth. So the family, so basically that's what primary refugee or primary immigrants means. And the family reunion is another reason new refugees from Africa most of the times arrive in Minnesota, whereas the secondary immigrants are people who are settled first in one state or another city and then decide to move to another place because of better opportunity, whether it's, again, jobs, healthcare, safe place to raise their kids, etc. So Somalis often ask of a new place. We used to be headers, pastorals community. People, used to head camel, right? They were nomads. So people don't just leave one place and go to elsewhere unless they send someone, before and understand where they're going and why they're going and whether, there are opportunity or not. So when it comes to Somalis, they often ask of a new place. Are there many Somalis? Do they have mosques and religion studies center? So they want to know what opportunities are available to them. Do they have a better opportunities for jobs and schooling for their children again? So during my research, I found that the most significant factors of Somalis' secondary immigration or migration were socioeconomic factors, community resources, and access to job markets that, of course, does not require much English skills, housing availability, even though there is an issue with that, education opportunities, and also the presence of family or a community member or a clan groups. Those were the sort of what actually motivated this particular community to move to central Minnesota. So when it comes to adapting, are we adapting our home? I want to talk about the refugees learning the English language, graduating colleges, and etc. So despite some barriers, many refugees learned the English language, including myself. It was not easy. It was not easy. It was really hard. What you can see right now is that the young generations and the first generation of Americans are much faster adapting or integrating or learning the English language faster than their parents, because the parents are working, they are, uh, you know, they're working, contributing to their families, taking care of the kids. So sometimes a mother of 6 or 7 or 8 children won't be able to go to school or may not have the time to attend those ESL classes because of her schedule. But the kids are in school, they're learning the English language, they're involved in the school's activities, whether it's sports or clubs or debates, and etc. Um, Graduates, of course, those who are graduating from the universities, some stay and some leave the community. So the English language barrier often then hampers refugees' effort to communicate, and maybe you know this, find a job or jobs, and navigate through the system. Again, the system, if you don't understand the system, if you don't know how to maneuver through that, is really difficult for people. And in St. Cloud, many meat processing plants and warehouse that once hired the Somalis, regardless of their language skills, are no longer hiring the refugees with limited English. And that's where our company is actually doing a great job, bridging the gap between the employers and employees. And we help the employees understand the American work ethics, being on time, not calling your supervisor at the last minute, and so many others. And we also train the employers about something about our faith and something about Somali culture, understanding the Somali culture, prayers, break times, etc. And we really ask them to make reasonable accommodations for their employees. So new arrivals then with no or limited English proficiency often have difficult time accessing the medical, of course, services, transportations, whether it's emergencies and food assistance, education resources, and more. However, despite the language barrier some face, the young generations are much more better or adapting or integrating or assimilating to some extent. I talked about my own education and experiences and the work that I do right now, and that was only 10 years ago. So again, they buy homes here in St. Cloud, Minnesota. Some are elected. We do have Ilhan Omar, who's a state rep, a city council, school board. Another young woman was just elected for school board. Seattle, Washington, we have seen that. But again, the communities really, they're not, again, we don't think alike and do alike. People are really, really trying to be a part of this society and doing phenomenal job. Now I'm going to talk about assimilation and integration and how they're similar and different. So assimilation, as you see it on your screen, involves, of course, the adoption of cultural values and norms from the broader society, or the abandonment of cultural values and norms by the majority group, immigrants or refugees, and the full adoption of cultural values and the norms of the larger society. Whereas integration refers to the degree of participation in the broader society, in interacting with people outside of one's own racial, ethnic, or religious community while holding into their culture and faith. And this is something, people always talk about, why are you not assimilating, right? And assimilation and integration are two different things. When it comes to America, I'll come back to that. We have the melting pot and then also the salad bowl. The melting pot is a diverse racial and ethnic groups, or both, forming a new creation, a new cultural identity, right? Whereas the salad bowl, as you can see the screen, is where each group of people maintains its original culture, faith, and beliefs, but also be a part of this beautiful society. So what do Somalis think of assimilation and integration? And this is what I found in my actually research. First generation Somalis and their children who are born or raised in the United States do not share an identical outlook uh, with the older generation of Somalis onto what integration and assimilation means. So if you ask a young person, they might give you a different perspective. So first generation Somalis who have both secondary education and those who have limited education see the process of integration and assimilation through a different lens, as I said earlier. So I asked a lot of people, what do you think between the two, and where do you stand in relation to those two, integration and assimilation, right? And one of my interviewee happened to be a young guy, graduated from St. Clair State. He has his own family. Very wise man said, and I'm quoting here, "We Somalis prefer to integrate," he said, instead of assimilation. And this means, he said, we can retain the best of our identity while celebrating the best of the new culture. I can be a law-abiding American citizen while being a Muslim and a Somali at the same time. And he goes on to say, I can fully participate and be able to contribute to the community politically and economically. So this young guy came to the United States of America as a young age. He went to school here. He's in grad school right now. He has his own family. I happen to know his wife. She graduated from St. Clair State. They are first-generation Americans. They want to hold on to what's important to them, their faith. We all have values. We value family. Maybe we value faith, friendship, and etc. So this group of people really want to hold on to that part, but they also assimilated to some extent because they went to school, they're contributing to the economy by working and etc. And then I talked to a young woman. Of course, she has 3 kids. All of them were born here. And this is what she said, and I'm quoting it. My 3 kids were born in the United States, she said. I want them to be fully American without forgetting their roots. I want them to keep our Somali traditions and language and pass them to their children and grandchildren, she said, as much as they can. We're not opposed to the American culture, she said. We really embrace it without abandoning ours. I want my children to celebrate 4th of July and Somali independence, she said, at the same time. I want them to continue to respect both cultures, but to be always mindful of who they are. And I asked, but they were born here. And then she said, but I am Somali American, and I was born there. So she had a point. She was saying they don't have to abandon their values. They can still keep their values and respect both cultures. Because they are American, but they're also ethnically Somali. That's what she was saying. And I also have a story that I really wanted to share with you. So my little niece, she's a 2nd-generation American. Her mother was born here, not in Minnesota. She was born in Washington, D.C. And my brother came here when he was really young. He doesn't even have an accent. I do have an accent, but not him. So my little niece, Nadia, who is now 8, was at home when, my aunt was visiting us from Africa. She came, and one day, Nadia, my little niece, and her mother came to visit my aunt. And my little niece said, my aunt actually said, excuse me, she wanted her to grab a glass of water, and she said it in Somali, Nadia, da, da, da. And my aunt didn't know Nadia didn't speak Somali, right? So, of course, she heard her name, but she didn't know what was said. So she pretended that she didn't hear it. And then my aunt, this time, raised her voice and asked her again. So my little niece was so frustrated, I can see her face, and I didn't say anything. And she turned and said, I don't speak Somali, okay? That was the most beautiful thing I have ever heard. And I just laughed, and my auntie was like, what did she just say to me? So basically, I was doing some interpretation, and I told her what she said. I mean, the little niece said, right? And my aunt was, whew. This is what my aunt said. She lost her religion. She lost her culture. She needs to go back home. And I said, whoa, 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 what? And she said, look at her mother. Of course, she was talking about my sister-in-law. My sister-in-law does not cover her hair, right? She wears, of course, the leggings, right? My aunt hates that. So there was a kind of like a war, I would say. After that, people were fighting as to, why these kids are doing this. If she lost her language, now she's going to become somebody else. So again, you can see the generational gap. The elderly people, they want to hold on to their culture. The younger generations, my little niece is already second generation American. Okay? Her mother was born here. And her mother doesn't even speak Somali. She understands Somali, but she does not speak Somali language. So it's coming, right? So when people ask me, why are you not assimilated? I go like, well, I wasn't wearing pants when I came to the United States of America. Really, seriously. So it is happening. Now, I want to talk about the barriers and the obstacles, right? We talked about the cultural barrier. We talked about the language, barrier, limited U.S. work. Of course, if you don't speak the English language, again, where else would you work other than, looking for minimum wage jobs? And then the lack of recognition of foreign credentials. I have family members who used to be, attorneys and nurses and etc., but now they cannot work because we don't recognize their credentials, right? And of course, when you don't even speak the English language, that's hard for people. Lack of economic advancement and inclusion. We're working on that, but again, diversity is, something important. So people are not included into the economical or the economic the economy. So that's really hard for the community. Now, I want to talk about the contribution and to the development and the growth of Minnesota's economy that the community is actually making. We know research showed how the immigrants and refugees are contributing to the economy. We know that. However, not many people are aware of this. Somali Americans businesses boost St. Cloud's economy, economic growth, level of employment, and also the community development. Yet small business owners face really challenges, because I'm one of them. Immense, I would say, they face immense obstacles that may hamstring their businesses. And those include, of course, the language, the culture barrier, the lack of, credit history when you come to the United States of America. If it's very hard. People don't have that credit history, access to capital, investment partnerships, access to business networks. Even the word network wasn't a part of our culture before we came to the United States of America. The men usually gather, at the religious centers or the mosques and socialize, or the restaurants and etc. And the women usually stay at home. So we don't have that culture of networking with people and, having friends in your circle that maybe would offer you some advice and networking and sponsorship and etc. The legal counsel. Back home, people usually open their businesses without attorneys, involvements, no legal issues. You don't have to go to the government. No, here is totally different. And also business technical assistant. People usually, back home, they used to depend on families, advice, and etc. Here is totally and completely different. And of course, accounting services. So the types of businesses then we have in St. Cloud right now include restaurants, um, grocery shoppings or grocery stores, medical transportation, insurance agencies, interpretation agencies, and daycare centers, and many others. So refugee-owned business then, despite the fact that they have all these barriers and challenges, they still contribute and create local jobs. There were a couple of people that I interviewed for my book who employed more than 30 people. And for those of you who read my book, obviously you have seen how I mentioned their names and their businesses and etc. So they hire workers who then contribute to the local economy by, of course, producing goods and offering services. So before I talk to or get into the community involvements and what I do, I really want to mention this. It is not easy for the new Americans, and when I say new Americans, I want to talk about, but particularly the East Africans and Somalis. It is not really, it is not easy for them to adjust, and we're new. We're new to the country because these people are coming. We came here for the last 20 years, and there are people who are still coming, even though the number really is small. But yet, they are adapting, they are integrating, they're getting out of their comfort zone, they're building businesses, they're contributing to the economy. But the thing is, whether it's the media, whether it's in news outlets, whether it's community involvement, their voices are not heard most of the times. Their contributions are not making it into the news. So sometimes you might read something on the news, and that may not be the case. And I'm not saying or bashing the media, but I'm just saying the reality. What those local businesses, how they're contributing is really immense. They are making contributions to our economy. They are not draining resources from the community. And the number of people who are on assistance is really minimal. And the young generations, the ones who are graduating from the universities now, are staying in the community and also assisting their elders. We're a very communal community. So when we graduate from universities, kids are not leaving their parents. They're staying in the area if they find a job and contributing to their family and assisting their parents and staying in the area so that they will make an impact instead of leaving the community, And that has been a challenge for the young Somali Americans for the past, I would say, 5 years, because I have seen young men and women graduating from these universities and not getting jobs in the area. So if we don't retain our young, talented folks here and employ them, it will be very difficult for our community to come together and have, that bridge cannot be built unless we retain and maintain those young, educated Somali Americans and all young people, not only one ethnic, but all young people. They're not sitting in the boards that I'm sitting on. I don't see young people all over, and I see you all here. We are in the universities doing phenomenal jobs, taking classes, working, and I know young people are busy. But we also need to be, of course, people will invite you if you don't go and knock them their doors. So I would say young people should not only stay, but also to be a part of the discussion. Join boards like chambers. Volunteer for United Way Board. Be active, get involved. Stay, make an impact. So, it's just talking about making the impact in the community. And those are the boards and the places that I'm involved right now. So I teach the tech, I talked about that. I have young mentees that I work with. And I do this work because I remember when I came to US, and this is the first time my family stayed in one place, by the way. My family never stayed in one place more than 10 years. This is the first time my family and I stayed in one place. So what I do is that I've been there, done it. So I know how hard it was for me to adapt and learn. So I do now mentor young women so that they would be able to do the job that I do and even more. So I do mentor young women. I also talk about my business. Abdi and I are partners, and we work with the business community and companies that hire minority people, in particular Somalis. And we do several things. We do translation. So we do translate policies and procedures for those companies if they're going to hire people who might not speak the English language. And we translate their policies and procedures, and also we do some mediation in the workplace so that if there is a tension or if there is a disagreement or if something happens at the workplace, we go in and, solve that conflict, whatever that conflict might be. And I have a specialty of conflict resolution. I studied conflict resolution when I went to St. Ben's, College of St. Benedict, and also University of Notre Dame. Bridging the bridge building. This is sort of work. This is my passion. I have passion for peace, and that's why I studied conflict resolution. So we host dinners, or we hold dinners every once a month. Just last week, we were at the Unitarian Church in St. Cloud. We partnered with them. They called us because they attended our previous Dine and Dialogue. That's what's called, Dine and Dialogue with your Muslim neighbor. So when Abdi and I started this dinner, our aim was to build the community, to bring the community together, to build bridges, and also help others understand something about our faith, our culture, and why we came here. And not only why, but also what we are doing here and the contributions that we're making, whether small or large. And we do have conversations where we talk about our challenges and barriers, and also understanding each other's culture, which is very important, because if you have this fear of unknown, that's an issue, and it has to be solved. So we do that through, of course, Somali food, which is delicious, right? So we eat together, talk about the things that matters to us, and then we ask people, what are your values? What would you like to see change in our community? Would you be able to be a part of that change? Because Gandhi said, be the change that you would like to see in this world. So sometimes I ask myself, what legacy do I want to leave? What do I want to do in this world while I'm here? So I wanted to do something great for my community and also for myself. So that's why Abdi and I partnered with this, Dine and Dialogue. We also went to Wade Park. The Wade Park Police Department reached out to us, and we did one in Wade Park. And now we're going to the churches. We're not here to impose on our ideas onto the American people. We're not interested in doing that. We're here because we want to share our food, right? We want to share what's important to us, our values, and we want to be able to learn from each other so that we will be able to live together peacefully and respectfully. So, and of course, I also sit many boards. I am the chair of the St. Cloud Area Diversity Council. We have a diversity council chair that I'm chairing this year. I was vice chair last year, the St. Cloud Chamber of Commerce. And also I'm United Way board. And also, well, so many other boards that I can't actually remember now. But this is what I'm doing right now for the community. And I have a lot of great mentors and friends and people who are actually working with us and who believed building a community and bridging the gap is really important. So those are the sort of my work in the community besides teaching and doing this business. These are other areas that I am actually involved right now. I guess I'll just go back here. Any questions, comments from the audience? Hello. There's no civil war per se right now, but you know, we do have a president who's from New York. He's a Somali American. He was just elected about 6 or 7 months ago, and not the elections that you and I know in America, a different election. And there are still issues when it comes to the security, no economic, education. So we don't have a civil war, but we do have issues when it comes to safety, because in Somalia, a holistic peace never take place. So when the civil war broke out, there were other clans. I don't know how much you know about clan membership. So we never had a democratic government. It was a dictatorship. And when the dictator was overthrown, the Somalis started fighting. So that fighting then left, when you become a stateless and your government falls, there will be, different factions, factions and, militia guys and warlords and all of that. So there's no peace per se if people wants to go back right now. There was a bomb that took place 2 months ago, Abdi was, or 3 months ago, and killed 400 people. My father was that place 20 minutes ago. My little sister was there, and she lost her best friend and a neighbor and a classmate. So really, even though I'm here and I'm safe and I'm so grateful to be in America, I also live this fear of, what if that one phone call, what if every time I get a phone from my father, I am really panicking because I don't know what I'm going to hear, right? Or what he's going to tell me. Or if something happened to my dad. So it is not a safe place to go back to. So we do not have a civil war, but there are groups there who a genuine reconciliation did not take place. So we have, groups who are fighting against the government. They have grievances, that is still open wound, right? So it is really difficult. And we also have neighboring countries, right? Who really want to see Somalia stay the way it is because they're benefiting from that fighting. And we also have myopic leaders who are not interested in building peace, right? Because they're there. They want to hold on to that power. They don't care about peace. They don't care about the people. They don't care about the country. So it is really difficult and safe in that bombing. There were 3 or 4 Somali Americans, Minnesotans, who just went there to visit their moms and dads, and they happened to be in the wrong place, and they died. I know the news article in the Twin Cities actually reported several of them. Yeah. Yeah, very good question. Well, my dad, it's interesting. So he was gonna come, but my dad is, he used to be a general in the Somali army. He was, he studied in Russia. This guy is really, really, he speaks Russian, he speaks Somali. So when we came here, not all my family were able to come here. So he said, well, I am old. That's what he said. He's not old. He wasn't old, actually, 10 years ago, but he's old, kind of. I don't know. I think my dad is still young. But to answer your question, what he said was that I know what the weather looks like. Even though he never came here, my dad was in Russia for 20 years. Okay? So he doesn't like the weather. And of course, my mom died, so he remarried, and he has younger kids, so he wants to stay with his kids. I'm the oldest, and he thinks I'm okay, and I can take care of myself, and that's selfish, right? Because I want my dad. I don't have a mother, but to answer your question, he wants to stay with his younger kids. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Another question? Comments? Young folks? How y'all doing? Go ahead. Mainly Golden Plum, Genio, um, Electrolux. So they work those assembly jobs. And yeah. When you say good restaurants, I want to know. I understand what you're saying. Have you ever been to State of India? Have you ever been to State of India? Okay, so we don't have one like that. We have like smaller family-owned businesses, and I know my American friends always say, we freak out when we go to your restaurants. And I'm like, oh yeah, me too. Because they're small, they're family-owned. The food is delicious, but I don't think our Americans, friends, that's awkward because I'm American. Our neighbors, our hosted community, let me say that. Let me reframe it. You might not find the ambience friendly. You see what I'm saying? Uh, yeah. We do have a good, I like the one on, I like all of them, but I do like one that is on, I think a division in Saint Germain, like by the bridge. Yeah. Somali Cafe. If you Google it, you will see it. Somali Cafe. Yeah. And tell him you know me. And tell him you know me because I usually go there and be like, this should be this and this shouldn't be that. And he knows me. So yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so very much. Thank you for having me. Thank you. Thank you.